Hey everyone, thank you so much for being here. Before we kick off this week's episode, just a quick ask. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell to make sure that you never miss an episode, never miss out on any of the strategies and tactics that we're sharing to help you continue charting your own path to freedom. And if you'd like to go deeper with any of this, we've launched a free Facebook group, which you can join at pathtofreedom.com/group. And we've linked that in the show notes to make it easy for you to find. All right. Thank you again for being here. Let's drop in to the episode. Hey, what's up, everyone? And thank you so much for dropping into another episode of the Path to Freedom podcast. Today, it is my pleasure to bring you another franchise brand spotlight. And in this one, if you're watching, I'm going to do franchise in air quotes. This is by far the franchise opportunity that I get asked about or hear people mention having an interest in more than anything else. And it's Chick-fil-A, right? Understandably so, right? These Chick-fil-A's are, they can't miss, right? Just like in any big organization or any franchise, not every location performs as well as others, but Chick-fil-A, compared to any other fast food concept, they blow everyone else out of the water. You can't drive past a Chick-fil-A without seeing a line wrapped around the building. Their efficiency is second to none. The way that they can get customers in and out, with them delivering now with their mobile app, like they've totally changed the game in the fast food industry. And the other titans of the fast food industry, McDonald's, Burger King, and the such, they're just trying to keep up, right? And they're trying to figure out how they can emulate the Chick-fil-A model and keep up with them. And if you really look into the numbers, I should have pulled up some examples of some of these other big fast food brands. In doing this, you guys can see how well I prepare. But the average revenue, right, or what we call AUV, average unit volume, for a Chick-fil-A compared to insert any other big name fast food brand is more than double, right? The average Chick-fil-A in 2023 did $8.1 million in revenue. That's freaking massive for a single location. And again, it varies. Not every Chick-fil-A out there is cranking out $8 million in revenue, but that's an average. And on top of that, the average EBITDA, earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, amortization, was about 15%. So if you take 15% of 8.1 million, you're looking at about 1.3 million to the bottom line, right? So crazy numbers, right? There's no question whatsoever that Chick-fil-A is an extremely successful business and a very lucrative opportunity. And so that's why it's not crazy at all to as I do, I talk to people every single day that are looking at business opportunities, considering how they can get into business for themselves. They're looking at different options. So Chick-fil-A comes up all the time, and it's also pretty well known to many people that are looking for business opportunities that Chick-fil-A only has a $10,000 franchise fee. So that's what I wanted to unpack today. I've put out I think some shorter videos kind of talking about Chick-fil-A as a franchise opportunity in the past, but I wanted to take a little bit of a deeper dive and really unpack some of this, because it is something that comes up very often. I think, most people out there, if you were like, hey, if you could own a Chick-fil-A franchise for only $10,000, would you be interested? They'd be like, hell yeah, I would. It's a no-brainer. And that is legit, that, it only cost a total of $10,000 to become a Chick-fil-A operator. All right. But that's a key word that we're going to come back to here in a little bit: operator. Okay. And to give some context, right? So that $10,000 that one would pay to become a Chick-fil-A operator, that is what they would call the franchise fee or the initial franchise fee. All right. So you have to understand that the initial franchise fee in any franchise is not equivalent to the total initial investment that's required to get the business up and running and operating. All right. The total initial investment, and franchise companies are required to disclose what they call an estimated initial investment range. This is in item 7 of a franchisor's FDD or franchise disclosure document. So that item 7 range, and it is always a range, it's never just one exact number, because that range includes the initial franchise fees. So that's what you pay upfront to the franchisor to become a franchisee. That gets everything, the rights to the brand name, proprietary information, training. If it's a territory based franchise, that initial franchise fee is securing your protected territory. So that's included in this estimated initial investment range. Then you have your startup cost, right? And this is where, most franchises are going to really vary in terms of how much capital is required. The difference between a franchise that you could get up and running for $200,000 and a franchise that's going to cost $2 million to get up and running. Usually the big delta is going to be in the startup cost, right? So if it is a franchise that requires a physical location, right, the startup costs are going to be, signing your lease, or, even potentially purchasing the location outright. Any modifications or build out that needs to be done to get the location suitable to operate the business out of. If there's an inventory component, any marketing and advertising that you may do prior to launching the business. If it is a franchise that requires vehicles or equipment, all of that's going to be factored into the startup cost portion of this overall initial investment range. And the last thing that's included there is initial working capital. So franchisors are required to include at least 90 days worth of working capital, into this estimated initial investment range. And that's just probably a topic for another conversation. I'm of the opinion that franchisors in most cases should include more than 90 days of working capital, because, if you open a business and you have exactly, approximately 90 days worth of working capital in your bank account, what happens if you're not cash flow positive at the end of 90 days? Hopefully you have some more capital that you can put into the business, or a way to raise more capital. But I digress from that point. So I just wanted to give some context, right? Because obviously, if you look at a Chick-fil-A, there's no way that it only costs $10,000 to get one of these big, nice, high end as far as fast food goes, locations up and running. All the equipment in the kitchen, the signage, the parking lot, even just the menus and the intercoms to order from, like, it all costs money, right? So to open a Chick-fil-A location, it's going to require anywhere between 186,000, which I would say is extremely on the low end, up to 2.7 million. And keep in mind, Chick-fil-A has, little kiosk locations in malls, and then they've got their traditional standalone locations. So I'm assuming that range, on the low end is going to be, a very, very small footprint type of location where it wouldn't cost as much. But, I think it's safe to bet that your typical standalone Chick-fil-A location is going to be $1 million plus startup cost. Okay. So why then can Chick-fil-A do that for just $10,000? Again, that's the initial franchise fee. McDonald's, for example, has a $45,000 initial franchise fee. And then all the other startup costs and initial working capital and everything that I just kind of broke down. And I don't have it in front of me, but again, McDonald's is also going to be at least $1 million plus, startup to get a McDonald's up and running. So with Chick-fil-A, well, let me back up. So with any other traditional franchise, all of that initial investment is funded by the franchisee, right? The initial franchise fees, the startup and build out costs, the working capital, And when I say funded by the franchisee, right, that does not necessarily mean that the franchisee is paying out of pocket for that. I mean, most people, even if they have the means to pay cash for everything to get a franchise business up and running, most people are, leveraging some funding or financing mechanism. SBA loans are very, very common for franchise investments. People are able to leverage, retirement funds and move some of those funds without tax penalties to start a business. So there's a variety of different ways that people are able to either leverage assets that they have that are not, necessarily their cash on hand, or leverage financing or debt for the vast majority of the startup costs with a franchise. But my point is, with a traditional true franchise model, uh, everything you see in that estimated initial investment range in item 7 of an FDD is the franchisee's responsibility. With Chick-fil-A, it is only the $10,000 initial franchise fee that is their, again, with the air quotes, franchisees or operators' responsibility. So why and how can Chick-fil-A do it this way? Because go back to the numbers that we talked about: 8 million in revenue, 1.3 million in EBITDA on average for a $10,000 investment. It's one of those things that kind of sounds too good to be true, right? And if you've been alive for any amount of time, you probably have learned, maybe the hard way even, that if it sounds too good to be true, maybe it is. Everyone, we'll get right back to the episode, but I wanted to quickly share a free resource with you. If you're curious about franchise ownership and want to learn more about how countless people, including myself, have leveraged franchising as a way to create more freedom for themselves and to take control of their livelihood, I've put together an ebook. It's called Franchise Wealth Creation, and it's the perfect starting point for anyone that's just curious to learn more about this whole franchise thing and how I've helped hundreds of other people navigate all the steps involved in understanding and researching franchising. So click the link in the show notes, fill out a short form. I'll send you the ebook. I think it's a great starting point if you're curious at all about learning more about franchising. All right, let's get back to the episode. And so I want to just kind of address, like, the point of this is not to knock Chick-fil-A, right? I've already sang their praises in terms of, how good of a job they've done building the brand. The business is clearly very, very successful. If you look at those numbers, the ROI potential is off the charts. What I do want to make clear, though, is that Chick-fil-A is able to structure it this way for their franchisees, or really what I think Chick-fil-A even refers to as their operators, because their model is not a true or traditional franchise model. And here's where it really differs, right? So one thing, which is not the big difference in my opinion, but most franchises are going to charge, well, every franchise is going to charge a royalty to their franchisees. A royalty is just a percentage of the franchisee's gross revenue that gets paid back to the franchisor. A good, kind of rule of thumb, most franchises are going to be somewhere between 4 and 8% for their royalty. Okay. Chick-fil-A's is 15. Okay, so Chick-fil-A is getting 15% of the gross revenue off the top from all of their franchisees or operators. All right, but here's where it really gets different from a true franchise model. In addition to that, they're taking 50% of the profits. Okay, so let's just use these numbers that I found in my research. At 8.1 million in revenue, Chick-fil-A is getting 15% of that off the top. All right, so that's roughly 1.2 million right there. And then if your profits on that are 1.2 to 1.3 million, let's just call it 1.2 to be conservative, then Chick-fil-A is getting 50% of that, right? So that's another 600,000. So don't get me wrong. If you own, or if you are an operator of a Chick-fil-A location that is bringing 1.2 million to the bottom line, you still are entitled to, roughly $600,000, because that's 50% of the profit that goes to the operator. That's a lot of money. That's a hell of a good income for most people in this world. So I'm not sitting here knocking Chick-fil-A and saying that, it is not a very lucrative business opportunity for someone. It absolutely can be. Clearly, the numbers are there. The numbers don't lie. Again, it should be noted that results are not guaranteed in any business, right? So just because there's these averages out there, with Chick-fil-A or any other brand that you can look at, it doesn't mean that you would get the same results. You have to execute, you have to follow the system. With a business like Chick-fil-A, if you are the operator, a lot of your time, I have to imagine, is being spent, developing and mentoring a team, right? Making good hiring decisions, training, establishing a culture, and Chick-fil-A's done that, at a very high level, but it's up to each of their operators to implement that at the local level and in their location. So it's not guaranteed. It's not going to just, materialize in front of you this great profitable business. You've got to put in the work and you've got to execute. And Chick-fil-A is going to have underperformers, just like any other national brand or franchise. But that's great income potential, right? That for most people, if you were to say, hey, you can invest $10,000 and within X number of years be bringing in five, six, $700,000 in income, again, going to be a no-brainer for a lot of people, right? So what I really want to point out is that because of the way Chick-fil-A has this structured, right? And the franchise agreement that you would sign with them, that franchise agreement is specific to the individual that they award the franchise to, which is the case in pretty much every other franchise, right? You sign a franchise agreement. You've heard me talk on this podcast before. Good franchise companies award franchises, they don't sell them, right? So if I sign a franchise agreement with a company, that is that brand approving me to become a franchisee. And I could not just, hand my franchise business over to someone else or sell it to someone else without the franchisor approving the person that I was handing the business over to or selling it to. So that alone is not what's so different here. The part that's different is that Chick-fil-A specifies in their franchise agreement that the business cannot be sold and the business cannot be passed on to family members. We'll get right back to the episode in just a minute, but if you've been considering business ownership, if you're already a business owner looking to expand and you're curious about franchising, I'd love to connect with you, answer any initial questions that you have, talk about a specific franchise, and detail the exact process that I use and have taken hundreds of people through to help them understand franchise ownership, find the right franchise for them, and conduct the necessary due diligence. Click the link in the show notes if you'd like to schedule a free, no obligation strategy call. I look forward to talking with you. And now back to the episode. Okay, there's a couple other differences or at least nuances that I'm going to talk about here in just a minute, but I really want to highlight this because, over the years, I've been fortunate enough to help hundreds of people get into franchise businesses. My wife and I own a franchise, have sold a franchise. We've been through this ourselves. The big attraction to a lot of people for getting into business for themselves, starting their own business, is one, not to have a boss, right? And to have the freedom and flexibility that being your own boss can bring. I would argue that this relationship that Chick-fil-A has with their franchisees is far more similar to an employer-employee relationship than what you're going to see in, any other true traditional franchise model out there. But the big thing is not being able to sell your business. Like that's where real generational wealth can be created with business ownership. Yes, you want, if you're going to start a business, you want to feel confident that it's going to generate good cash flow and good income for you while you own it, right? But the big attraction, especially some of the more sophisticated investors that I've worked with over the years, they're looking at the long game. They're looking at the big picture. They want to get into a franchise where they feel confident that they can build it, scale it, and sell it. And obviously they want to make money along the way while they're doing that, but they want to put themselves in a position for a really big payday. They want to put themselves in position for a windfall at some point. And that's with business ownership where you're going to see true life-changing money come into the picture. Even at 600K a year in income, it's a great living, but unless you're a very, very savvy investor and living well below your means, it's going to still be tough to really build generational wealth. A lot of the people that I work with that have an interest in starting a business, part of that interest at least is they want to get their kids involved. They want to give their kids an opportunity and potentially, build the business, lay a foundation, give their kids some exposure and some training, and then, hand or sell the business to them when they get a little bit older. That's not going to be an option with Chick-fil-A. So the other things here are scalability, right? And I couldn't find this document anywhere. I'm sure if I would have kept digging, I could have found it. But it's my understanding that Chick-fil-A is very, very strict about the number of locations that they will allow someone to operate. And, 2 locations is about the most that they're going to allow anyone to operate. And even that is pretty rare. In other words, you have to be extremely successful as a Chick-fil-A operator, really have a strong track record if they're going to consider allowing you to operate a second location. And again, for a lot of people, that may not be a big deal because you're like, hey, if I can make 5, 6, 700 grand a year, do it in a business that I like and enjoy doing it in, like I'm happy, I'm content. But a lot of other people out there, they want scalability, right? They don't want a cap on how much they can make or how big of a business they can build, especially if, they are thinking exit strategy and thinking down the road, hey, how can I really capitalize on building a successful, profitable business beyond just the income that it can generate for me while I own it. So, in a lot of cases, you're likely to be limited to just being able to operate a single, maybe, 2 locations. And on top of that, I think most people are aware of this because they're, Chick-fil-A is kind of renowned, I guess, for this. It's extremely competitive to even be given the opportunity to be a Chick-fil-A operator. And that's a good thing, right? I talk all the time about how the best franchisors out there are very selective about who they will award franchises to. They shouldn't sell a franchise to just anyone that has the money or the interest to do it. They should really vet the prospective franchise owners that they're meeting with and make sure that they feel confident that they have the skill set and the mentality to be successful, and also that they're going to be a good culture fit. And with the notoriety and success that a brand like Chick-fil-A has had, they have the luxury of being very, very selective and making it hard to become a Chick-fil-A operator. So, I've heard some examples. I actually worked with a guy a couple of years ago to help him find a franchise business. And prior to he and I working together, he had been going through Chick-fil-A's process to try to become an operator. And I don't remember exactly, but if memory serves, he had worked with Chick-fil-A, through this process where, he was trying to become an operator for at least 3 years, maybe even longer than that. And eventually he got to the point where they said, "Hey, congratulations, you have fulfilled everything that we're looking for you to become a Chick-fil-A operator." Okay, so now you're basically in a queue of other people that have been approved to become an operator, and we will let you know if and when we plan to open a new location in your general area. And there was no guarantee that they would, or if they were going to, how long that would be. And then they said, if you want to move into this other queue where you basically are in rotation for just the soonest locations, and if you're willing to relocate, then, you can probably become an operator sooner. Well, this guy had a wife and numerous kids that, were still at home and in school, and, they'd lived where they lived for basically their whole lives. Like he wasn't in a position where he could just, or wanted to, uproot his family and move to wherever the next opportunity was going to be. A lot of people probably would jump at that opportunity and have the flexibility to do it, and that's a great thing. But I just wanted to highlight, the key differences, in my opinion, between Chick-fil-A and most other franchise opportunities. There's no doubt in my mind that Chick-fil-A is a great business opportunity for many, many people out there. But I think there's also a lot of people I know, from experience of working with so many other people and really digging deep with them on what their goals are and what they want to get out of business ownership, that the model that Chick-fil-A uses is not going to, allow someone to really achieve long term what they want to achieve through business ownership. So, everyone, we'll be right back to the episode. But one quick note, success doesn't happen in a vacuum. So if you'd like to learn more, you want to go deeper and interact with like-minded people, I'd love to have you join the free Path to Freedom Facebook group. You can join by going to pathtofreedom.com/group and become a part of the Path to Freedom community. All right, back to the episode. No hate towards Chick-fil-A. I'm a big fan. I've got 3 young kids, so we're frequent flyers at Chick-fil-A ourselves. Even since I've been on this health kick, I can do a 12-pack of Chick-fil-A nuggets. It's 40 grams of protein and I think 340 calories. You can get in trouble with the sauces, which, God, that Chick-fil-A sauce is amazing. But anyways, I'm a big fan of the brand. And it's clearly a very lucrative business and a great opportunity for a lot of people. But, when I hear people say, "Hey, I want to own a Chick-fil-A franchise," you know, I just want to make sure people understand, what a Chick-fil-A franchise is, because at the end of the day, you don't really own it. You can make a lot of money doing it, but it's not an asset that you're building, that you own, that you could sell one day, that you could, bring other family members into. In a way, you're kind of buying yourself a job, a very high income job potentially, but not necessarily good or bad, just different from the traditional franchise model where you own your business, you keep 100% of the profits, you have the ability to build and sell that business at some point, or potentially kind of turn it into a legacy business where you're getting your kids or other family members involved at some point. So anyways, I hope this was helpful. I hope this sheds some light on the intriguing Chick-fil-A franchise opportunity. If you want to learn more about franchise ownership, I work with hundreds of brands. What I do is I go through an in-depth consultation process with the individuals that I work with. I really, really get to know the people that I work with and try to understand their goals and, where they are in their life today, but more importantly, where they're trying to go. And, how could owning the right type of business help them get there? And with all the relationships with these hundreds of different top tier franchises that I work with, I'm able to match people up with the franchises that have the characteristics that are going to, more likely allow them to hit their goals while giving them the type of lifestyle and ultimately the type of freedom that most people are looking for. So I've got time for anyone that has questions or is curious or just wants to learn more. My time is always free. There's no obligation. I get paid by the franchise companies when I introduce them to someone that goes on to become a franchisee. So puts me in a great spot where I don't have anything to sell you or anyone else. But I love meeting cool people that are thinking entrepreneurially, curious about how they may be able to transition into business ownership themselves, and be a guide, be a resource. And I love really strategizing with people. So shoot me an email. Email address is in the show notes. Thank you for tuning in. Please like and subscribe if you have not done so already. And the biggest honor or thank you that you could ever give me is, pass this podcast along to someone else that may also get value from it. With that, I'm probably about to go to Chick-fil-A because I am starving after talking about Chick-fil-A for the last 30 minutes. And then I'm going to have to go work out. But thank you guys for tuning in. We'll talk to you next time.